house.
Don, ticks are a pretty serious matter, especially with summer coming around. We're out and about, we have our dogs walking around in the woods and so on and so forth. And you really have to think about ticks, right?
Absolutely. Ticks and Lyme disease. I had my own bout with Lyme disease about 8 years ago, and it's no fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it's just something you have to think about. And we're here to share with you some information on ticks and Lyme disease and how to protect yourself out in the wild. Now, we have a little presentation we'd like to share with you, and we're going to switch over to that now. Okay. This is our tick talk we put together for you. And let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we're going to talk about today, Don.
Sure. So today we're going to go over how to identify ticks and their characteristics. We're going to talk a little bit about tick-borne disease, and then ultimately and most importantly, how to protect yourself from ticks and how to remove them if you do have an embedded tick. So first, the tick. Ticks are arachnids, much like spiders and mites. They have pretty much two body parts. They have the abdomen and the head part here. Ticks have 8 legs, like spiders and mites would. And then they have these piercing, sucking mouth parts. So all ticks feed on blood. They're parasitic. And so the 8 legs is really important because a lot of these look like certain types of insects. The one caveat here is that the larva stage of ticks have 6 legs. So if you have a tick embedded in you and it only has 6 legs, it's a larval tick, and that's important for reasons that we'll go over shortly. So here's a really great graphic of the life cycle of a deer tick. So in the middle here, in the spring is where the female ticks lay their eggs. Eggs hatch out to be the larval stage. That larval stage feeds on small rodents and birds. And then that's where the tick can potentially pick up any tick-borne disease. So when it's first hatched out of the egg, it doesn't have any of that those bacteria in its gut, but in that larval stage is when it has its blood meal is where it can pick that up. So it has its blood meal, then it molts through the winter and fall, and it becomes a nymph. This is the stage where it's really kind of dangerous to humans because it's small still, and then it can have those diseases in its guts. So then it has a blood meal on a larger mammal, including humans, mainly deer. And you see this gray shaded area, mid to late spring through the summer is when those nymphal ticks are active and most dangerous to humans. So the nymph has its blood meal, drops off, molts, turns into an adult. Those adults mate and they feed and mate, fall off and lay eggs. It's also important to note that the female tick, the one with the red, this is a deer tick here. The red abdomen is the only adult that feeds and engorges itself. The males die after reproducing. So now we're going to go over really quick the types of ticks that we have in our area or may have in our area. This first one is the black-legged or deer tick. It's called a deer tick because its main host is a white-tailed deer. In the upper left-hand corner is the larval version. You see that it only has 6 legs. Then it'll molt and turn into a nymph. And then either the female is the one on the right with the red belly, and the male is the one on the left. So the distribution in North America relies greatly on the white-tailed deer. It's its main host. like we talked about, the larvae and nymphs usually feed on rodents. The adult females tend to feed on larger mammals, including white-tailed deer and humans. The adult males die after breeding, and it's the nymphs and the adult females that are most likely to spread disease. And even more so than nymphs because they're harder to detect. This is a really good graphic of where a black-legged tick, the environment that the black-legged tick likes to live. So that the top photo shows the brown as being the wooded area, the lighter green being the edge, tall grasses and shrubs area, and then the darker green being turf or your lawn. So the black-legged tick you see here, it is mainly brown, so that likes to live in the woods. It requires high humidity to survive, so it's found in forests with dense vegetation and leaf litter that provide that moist environment. Here's an example of an engorged, how long it takes for a female black-legged tick to engorge itself. So in just 7 days, it goes from this little tiny animal to this giant balloon. And on the right-hand side is a graphic of the nymph black-legged tick in our region when it's most active. So April, May, June, July is when you're most likely to encounter them. And then late October and November, you can find them also. So I need to add that ticks can be active whenever their microclimate is warm enough for them to pretty much thaw out. So I've had ticks attached to me in late November. It was snowy, but it was a sunny day. So it provided enough warmth for them to come out and do their thing. All right, here we have the American dog tick. The males and females are pretty hard to distinguish. The adults are different from the deer ticks for a number of reasons, but the main one that's easy to tell is they don't have black legs or a black head. If we go back to the deer tick here, they have a black sputum, this is called. So this American dog tick prefers medium-sized hosts like raccoons, skunks, cats, dogs. It's important to note that your pets are one of its main hosts. The larvae and nymphs prefer to feed on small mammals like mice, voles, rats, things like that. The adult American dog tick regularly goes after humans, and it often climbs to the crown of the head to feed. So we'll talk about prevention a little bit later, but it's important to note that that's an area where they like to go. The nymphs and larvae rarely attach to people or pets. And that's a lot different than the deer tick. The nymph definitely attaches to humans. And then so this is where the American dog tick likes to hang out. A lot different than the deer tick. It doesn't like that moist environment in the woods, but it does like warm and dry locations. So your roadsides, trails, lawns, things like that. Areas where your pets are really likely to pick them up. And then here's the growth comparison when the dog tick feeds. And then it shows, so here I put the graphic of the adult female when it's most active, because again, the nymph version is not likely to pass on disease to humans, but the adult female is. So they're active from March to August, pretty much, with the most active month being in May. All right, now we have the Lone Star tick, which is not yet in our area, but it has been found downstate. So it's not something we have to worry about right now, but it is something that we are likely going to have to worry about with global climate change. It seems that most species of ticks are kind of moving north with the prevalence of global climate change. This guy is the most aggressive of our tick species. I forgot to add earlier that ticks do a thing called questing. So it's when they hold on with their back legs and kind of reach out with their front legs and wait for their prey to walk by, and then they attach this way. The Lone Star tick is a little bit different, where it can do that, but it can also move 3 times as fast as the black-legged tick, so it can actually like hunt and kind of go towards its prey. The Lone Star tick likes all of those habitats, so kind of like anything, you can find it anywhere. And here's a graphic of its engorging period. And then that is active from March until November, pretty much. The nymph is most likely to pass on disease, and Mark's gonna touch on that a little bit later. And then we have our brown dog tick. The brown dog tick predominantly occurs around human settlements, and it can infest homes, kennels, and animal pens. It's most often found in homes, especially homes with dogs, and controlling infestations can be difficult. This one's important to note that it doesn't, I can't say it doesn't ever transmit disease to humans, but it's very rare. It can transmit disease to your pets though. And I'm going to pass it over to Mark. He's going to talk a little bit about tick-borne disease.
All right, done. Now, what we have here is a list of most known tick diseases. There may be others, but these are the ones we wanted to mention. And Lyme disease is the most foremost one here in New York State. Although we know that anaplasmosis and babiosis, did I say that right, Don?
Babesiosis.
Babesiosis is also known to be in New York State, along with Powassan. Now, Don mentioned there are several different types of tick varieties. He just showed you a handful anyways, and different ticks carry different diseases. So the deer tick, for example, is not necessarily going to carry all these diseases. We know it carries Lyme disease. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at the, well, in a minute, we're gonna take a look at different ticks, but let's take a look at this first. So as I mentioned, different types of ticks carry different diseases. Now, if we look at tick-borne disease, Lyme disease here, this, look at the years here. These are confirmed Lyme disease cases in Livingston County. Now, 10 years ago, the medical profession was seeing very few documented Lyme disease cases, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that, well, maybe it wasn't as prevalent, but seemingly medical providers weren't really looking so much for Lyme disease. You know, you'd have certain symptoms that could be any number of things, but they weren't maybe connecting that to Lyme disease, right, Don? So now, fast forward 10 years to today, I mean, you compare that to 75 cases versus 1, 2, 3, 4 cases. We certainly know that Lyme disease is on the rise here in this part of New York State. And as you can see here, the numbers during 2020 and 2021, they were a little off because of COVID reporting, but we know that there's a pretty steady trend of Lyme disease occurring here in New York State. And with these different tick species and climate change, we're seeing this tick migration. Different types of ticks are carrying different diseases. Now, the one that's most common here in this area, as Don mentioned, is our black-legged deer tick. And that most commonly transmits Lyme disease. We also know it has I'm not gonna be able to say that today, Don.
Babesiosis.
Babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and Powassan disease. Now, Powassan is especially dangerous because it's known to have fatalities that can result because of that. So we want to be especially aware of that. Now talk a little about the American dog tick, and it has Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia. I'm not going to be very good at these today.
That's fine.
How do you say it, Don?
Tularemia.
Tularemia. Okay, maybe something. Okay, Lone Star tick, another one Don talked about. These are some of the other diseases that can carry. And again, just because we're not necessarily seeing those in this part of New York State doesn't mean that they're not making that migration, because you look at down Long Island area, right? All kinds of ticks down there, and it has to do with, you know, the climate and the geology, geography, so on and so forth. We have our brown dog tick and spotted fever and some other things. And as Don mentioned, you want to be especially aware of your dogs and if they're picking up these ticks. And, you know, Don, it seems like a lot of times when you find a tick on a dog, it's already engorged, right?
Right.
So that's one way you can pretty readily see them, because they're pretty small otherwise, especially if it's a nymph.
Right. Yeah.
So those of you who have ever found a engorged tick on your dog, you know, we like to save those sometimes for documenting purposes. We have a little bit of a tick collection here. You're welcome to stop in and take a look at those. All right, so we're going to talk a little more about Lyme disease specifically now, because again, that's the most prevalent here in this part of New York State and in Livingston County. And again, the black-legged tick or the deer tick is going to transmit Lyme disease most commonly. And so ticks can attach anywhere in your body. I've had them attach onto my shoulder, onto my arm, but you want to be especially aware of those areas where they really like to hang out. And as you can see here, they're sort of some of the nooks and crannies you might think about. Bottom line is, when you do a tick check, you need to look everywhere and see if you can spot a tick, because early detection is key, and we'll talk more about that. All right, now for a tick to transmit one of these diseases that we talked about, generally the tick has to be attached for at least 24 hours, although some research suggests otherwise, that it can transmit it sooner than that. But generally for Lyme disease, 36 to 48 hours is when commonly you're going to be affected by that. You're going to pick up that Lyme disease. So you want to do that tick check early on, after you come in from doing your yard work, out for a walk, or so on and so forth. And doing that sooner than later is going to be one of your best defenses for avoiding a tick-borne disease. And with Lyme disease, you know, the classic bullseye rash, right? That's what we're looking for, but it doesn't always appear that way. And you know, you can see why they call it a bullseye, but it may resemble just some other kind of rash. If you see anything that looks out of the norm, just be thinking about, well, it could be a tick disease. Once the Lyme disease sets in, these are some of the symptoms that you might see, and I'm not going to read all these necessarily, but when you start looking at some of these different symptoms, they can certainly resemble other things. In fact, I might have any number of these going on at any time, right?
Getting older.
Yeah. So just be thinking about, you know, if you think you might have something going on, you start connecting the dots and look at the different symptoms that might lead you to Lyme disease. But hopefully it doesn't get to that point. You're going to look for that tick. After you've been outside, you're going to find it if it's there and remove it. Again, here are some photos of the late symptoms with the rash. Although it may not look just like this, it could take on a resemblance.
So if we can just stop you here real quick, Mark. So back in 2017, I had almost all of those symptoms on that sheet and was going to all the doctors and couldn't figure out what was going on. Until it seemed like months later, I just broke out in these rashes and everyone was like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah, right.
You've got Lyme disease. So, so it's important to know the symptoms and know what to look for.
Yeah. And as I recall, Don, you didn't actually find that tick on you, right?
I did not. Nope.
Yeah.
I never knew that I was bitten by a tick.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's concerning. All right. Now, these next 3 slides, we're going to talk about some myths that might be associated with Lyme disease. And I feel like this is a good short discussion here. So here's myth 1. If you find a tick on your body, you should take antibiotics to prevent the disease. Well, a couple things to say about that. First of all, if you find that tick and you're pretty comfortable, it's less than 24 hours that it's been on you, your odds are better. It doesn't mean you're necessarily not going to get something, but you want to sort of weigh variables with that, given, typically, most folks will know when they're outdoors, when they might have picked up that tick once they find it, and you can generally deduce how long that tick has been on you. But key thing to understand here is only a doctor can prescribe those antibiotics. And you want to think about, well, you don't want to take these too often either because they lose their effectiveness, right? But the bottom line is, if you feel like you've picked up a tick where you might transmit a disease, you want to seek medical attention on that. And Don, I know there's some people I've talked to that use like an online app for medical services. So remember a friend telling me, look, we have this app on our phone. It's like a web doctor, right? So you put in your symptoms, you say, hey, I might have picked up a tick a day or two ago. And through this service or this app, you can actually be prescribed that antibiotic.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know it's fairly common for folks with known tick bites to be prescribed a prophylactic dose, so just like a quick short dose of antibiotics. I'm not a medical professional, so I don't really understand what effect that has, but it's regularly happens. I know a few people who had that experience.
Right. It's better being on the safe side sometimes. All right, let's look at our next myth. You can test the tick that bit you to see if you have Lyme disease. And of course, there are some variables that go with this. You know, when I found a tick probably a couple of years ago on my shoulder, it was really embedded. I think I was showering at the time. I looked at my shoulder. I'm like, what is that? And I think I kind of freaked out. Next thing you know, I'm like digging at it, and probably went down the drain. But I probably did the wrong thing and not kind of looking at it more scientifically.
Yep.
And thinking, hey, maybe that's a tick. Maybe I should try and remove it carefully.
Yep.
And then think about whether I want to have that tick tested.
Sure, but the thing that I'd like to add is if you have a tick and you test that tick and that is positive for Lyme disease, that doesn't mean that tick transmitted it to you. Or vice versa, if you have a tick, you get it tested and it's negative for Lyme disease, that doesn't mean, you were obviously in tick habitat, so that doesn't mean you weren't bit by a tick. Right. So our recommendation is that you get diagnosed based on yourself, your symptoms, not what the tick is positive or negative for.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right, let's look at our next myth here. Some people who get chronic Lyme disease will be sick for the rest of their lives. And you know what? I think it's the same thing with COVID, right? Everybody's different. Those who contracted COVID might have had very minor symptoms. Others had, very severe and leads to the long COVID and so on and so forth. And in a way, it's the same thing with Lyme disease.
Yeah, this is a pretty hot button topic too. Some people will tell you there's no post Lyme disease syndrome. And then other people will tell you, the exact opposite. There's no way that it doesn't exist. So.
Right. All right, so those are a few ticks or a few myths on Lyme disease and ticks, and I'm going to turn it over to Don for the next part.
Great. So this, in my opinion, is the most important part of this whole talk, and that's how to prevent tick bites and how to properly remove a tick. So our recommendations would be when you're outdoors in those tick habitats to wear light colored clothing. And if you all were here in person, I'd ask you, why do you think you wear light colored clothing? And then you'd answer, well, because it's easier to see those ticks. My favorite thing to do and demonstrate is to tuck your pants into your socks when you're out in the woods and hiking. That makes it so ticks can't crawl up through the bottom of your pants. We recommend showering or bathing as soon as possible after being in tick habitat. That makes it so you can wash them off before they can attach. And also it gives you an opportunity to do a thorough tick check. And then perform a full body check using a mirror. And then always inspect your clothing and gear. So if you've got a jacket that you're wearing outside hunting, give that a check before you put it away and put it on the next day. Same thing with dogs. Your pets. It's a good thing to give them a quick scan if you think they're around in tick habitat. Right. So one thing I wanted to add here, and I forgot to put it on the slide, is that there are a few insecticides that you can use. There's one called, well, DEET obviously is one of them, but folks, you know, for obvious reasons, don't love using that strong DEET. There is a product called permethrin. It's a product that you spray on your clothes and let it dry, and that's a really great tick repellent if you know if you're doing a lot of outdoor work, hunting, camping, things like that. I strongly recommend that. I had a few jobs where we essentially lived outside, so that's what we did with all our clothes. You know, we laid out our pants, sprayed it with that permethrin, and that's good for I think up to 6 washes or something like that. Picardin is another insect spray that you can use. I think that's one that you apply to your skin, but that works really great as well. And again, with any of this stuff, feel free to reach out to either myself or Mark, and we're happy to answer questions. So here in environmental, well, I think let me do this real quick. So we're going to talk a little bit about tick removal before I go. I had those slides backwards. So I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and go to a short video from the New York State Department of Health that'll talk about tick removal.
Ticks are common in New York State and they can carry disease, so it's important to check for ticks and to know how to promptly remove a tick if you find one attached. First, you'll need a pair of fine-tipped tweezers like these. They work much better than blunt-tipped tweezers or your fingers alone. You can do this yourself or ask a friend to help. Before you start, clean your tweezers with a little rubbing alcohol on a cotton ball. Now grasp the tick where the mouth is attached, which isn't always easy to see, especially on ticks the size of poppy seeds. But if you gently lift the tick with your tweezers, you can see that it's attached like a hinge. That's how you can tell where the mouth is. Get as close to your skin as possible with your tweezers. Now pull in a slow, steady, upward motion away from the skin. Don't twist, jerk, or wiggle it out. Your skin will pull up as the tick detaches, just like when you pluck a hair. Afterward, clean the bite site with rubbing alcohol and a little antibacterial cream. If the mouth parts stay in your skin, you can either leave them alone or try to remove them with tweezers, as you would a splinter. Keep an eye on the bite site for 30 days, watching for any kind of rash, including the telltale bullseye rash for Lyme disease, or for flu-like symptoms such as headaches, muscle aches, or fever. If any symptoms do develop, you'll want to see your doctor and make sure to let him or her know the date and location of the bite. Remember, not all ticks carry disease, and your risk for disease is greatly reduced if ticks are removed promptly. Knowing how to safely remove a tick can help keep you safe from tick-borne disease. Learn more at health.ny.gov/tick-free.
Good video.
How to kill all mosquitoes in the area in just minutes. This simple but brilliant trick you can do tonight to eliminate.
Sorry about that. So that's a really great video showing proper removal.
We back on.
We're not. Nope. Let me get back to our presentation here. Maybe. All right, so there's a lot of myths and ways to remove ticks out there. A lot of them are going to increase your risk of getting one of these tick-borne disease. Lyme disease and all the bacterial diseases are actually held in the gut of a tick, so in that abdomen portion. So anything you do that can you know, there was like, I've heard of clear nail polish or rubbing alcohol and letting them kind of squirm their way out. Well, that gives them the opportunity to inject that saliva and pass on the disease using fine tips tweezers and pulling straight up. That doesn't disturb the gut at all, and it's really effective. We, in our office, we have tick removal kits. If you're interested, like, again, please reach out and we'll get those to you. Anything to add there, Mark?
No, I mean, I think there are a number of myths on proper tick removal. We mentioned a couple of nail polish and, you know,
Lighters.
yeah, burn it off.
Fire.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, is there another accepted way of tick removal other than this? Or is it really just?
No, this would be the general accepted practice. There's a lot of tools out there like the tick twister. But again, I think those are less effective and leave you more susceptible to disease transmission.
Yeah, and probably maybe the same goes for tick removal on your dog, right?
Right,
Same
yep,
thing.
yeah,
You wanna think about getting it off in the right way.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
So here in environmental health, we try to provide outreach like we're doing today. We do offer tick identification, something that I really like doing. So if you have a tick and want to know what species it is, you can either send some really good pictures or bring the specimen in. If you preserve it in rubbing alcohol, that's the best way to do that. We can regularly consult with other agencies. Cornell Cooperative is really great and has been super helpful in the past. And then we'll collaborate with healthcare providers too when needed. I want to give a little shout out to our tick page on the Livingston County website. It's got really great information. Most of what we talked about today can be found here. So if you've got any questions, look there, or like I said, give us a call.
All right, this is on, if you go under the Department of Health, you'll get to the environmental health section, and then there's all kinds of other information you'll find there too. But you'll see this as well. All right, so we're wrapping things up here, and the key message we wanted to deliver to you is it's very simple. Just think ticks, right? So when you're out and about, whether you get back in the car from your hike, you get home, you know, even you forget about it the next morning, you're in the shower, like, hey, maybe I should check myself for ticks. Because again, that early detection is key. And, you know, as Don mentioned, we give out free tick removal kits, and what those consist of is a nice pair of pliers, a very sharp needle nose plier, and it has some other supplies in there that you might need along with that. Now, if you'd like one of those free tick removal kits, get a hold of us. You can email myself or Don. You'll find my emails on the environmental health webpage. There's any number of ways to get a hold of us, I'm sure, but we'll hook you up with a free tick removal kit. Yeah. So at this point in our program, I believe we're going to turn it over to the questions.
Yes.
Next slide. And then, so what we're going to ask you to do here, folks, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, and we'll go from there. Back to the video.
Yeah, we should be.
Yeah, we could probably close this off. Sure. Actually. All right. Go ahead, ask a question. It's okay. All right, here we go here. How will your doctor test for Lyme disease? Well,
That's a great question.
that's a great question.
So there's blood tests that they can do. I don't know the specifics. I'm not a healthcare professional, but
Yeah.
if it seems like you have all the symptoms of Lyme disease, they can do blood tests and figure it out.
Yeah. Mary has some good questions here. So yes and no, and yes and no. How do you want to respond to that?
I think yes. after being outdoors, hot water and dryer would kill ticks, yes. I think the issue, Mary, is a lot of times, especially with hunters, is I guess hiking too, jackets. We tend to wear our clothes over and over again without putting them through the wash, so.
That's where the permethrin's really great.
Right.
And permethrin, by the way, if you're a hunter, permethrin is odorless, so it's not like you have to be concerned about, oh, I'm gonna smell like a pharmacy if I'm out in the woods. But the putting your clothes in the dryers, I understand, is a very effective way to kill ticks.
Sure, yep. All right, anything else? Anyone have any good tick stories?
Anybody going on any good summer vacations? Okay. Names of insecticides, let's go ahead and, can we type in permethrin there, Don? And I bought this at Walmart before, I believe. And again, any insect repellent that has DEET in it is going to be effective. And there are different concentrations of DEET. You might see anything from 15% to 35.
Right.
But it seems any amount of DEET is can be helpful.
Right, well, there's DEET's also proven to not be great for you, so,
True.
which is why I really like permethrin, because that gets applied to your clothing, not your skin, it dries out, because it's a little bit less harmful overall, so there's pros and cons to all that. Kelly, as far as where we see the most amount of ticks, it's in the woods where deer are. Is the short answer. We can find them anywhere pretty much, but in the denser brush, where you'll find deer is where you're gonna see, especially deer ticks.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll pick them up when you don't expect to as well.
Right. Yep.
That goes back to pig ticks. All right, well, I guess everybody gets a short lunch today.
Sounds good.
All right. Here we go.
That's a great question, Mary. I am not sure. So Mary asked if disease can be transmitted if you pinch a tick. I don't think disease can be transmitted that way. But the best thing to do, is put it in rubbing alcohol or flush it or something like that, because honestly, pinching it is it won't kill them all the time. They're pretty resilient. It's hard to kill them by pinching, so.
Even stomping on them sometimes, what I do is I'll actually scuff it with my bottom of my shoe.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's, taken care of. But
Right.
the bottom line is they're difficult to kill unless you really apply some pressure. Okay. Well, I think we can leave it at that. And of course, if you have any other questions, hopefully you know where to reach us. And again, reach out for your free tick removal kit, and have a safe summer. Thank you everyone for attending.
Have a great day. Thank you.